and dark, nasty place near my tail. What, look? See?
What? Here we are again with another Bethesda classic. We played the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard not too long ago, and today we're going to look at its fraternal twin, an Elder Scrolls legend, Battlespire. Bethesda was on cloud 9 with the success of their second installment in the Elder Scrolls series, so they decided to do what any logical person would do. Put that cash cow in the back burner and do something totally different. I am being a bit unfair. One of the 3 games they began working on following Daggerfall's success was the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. The plan was to release it in 1998, rather than in 2002, but the scope was too big, and it needed more time. So the team was reassigned to other things. Those other things being the something totally different, Redguard and Battlespire. These 2 games were supposed to be the first installments of 2 new series, Adventures and Legends. A letter from Christopher Weaver, the then president of Bethesda, which shipped with Battlespire, the letter, not the man, outlined the philosophy of these new series. Adventures would focus on historical figures doing historical things. Cyrus the Restless and the Stros Mackay Uprising. Legends would focus on pivotal times in Tamriel's history rather than pivotal people. The Daedric invasion of the Battlespire, for instance. I guess the Imperial simulacrum of Arena and the warp in the west of Daggerfall weren't pivotal enough. The real distinction must be the openness of the games. Battlespire plays more like a large Daggerfall dungeon than anything else, and that's no coincidence. Battlespire was originally planned as an expansion to Daggerfall. Dungeon of Daggerfall Battlespire was its original name, and it was just supposed to be a fun little romp through a dungeon, as Bethesda put it in their 10th anniversary retrospective article. With all the devs reassigned from Morrowind, they found themselves more capable of delivering on a more complex game than just a simple dungeon crawl. With the extra resources, Battlespire could have a wider array of characters, voice acting, a fuller story, more intense level design, a variety of realms you get to visit, and what's unique to Battlespire and Battlespire alone, it has multiplayer capabilities. Quite ambitious. Sadly, neither Battlespire nor Redguard sold well. The latter was received well, of course, because it's just got so much damn personality. The former... well, hopefully this video will explain why it's not touted as a hidden gem. Even I, a person who tries to be somewhat positive and loathes the idea of becoming a grievance YouTuber, have significant trouble compliment sandwiching this game. But that doesn't mean I won't try. Side note, after finishing writing this script, I've come to better appreciate Battlespire. I do actually have some nice things to say about it. So what's the game even about? You may have heard some interesting talk in the past about spaceships in the Elder Scrolls, that technology in this world is far more advanced than you might have assumed, Dwemer notwithstanding. It's kinda true, but it's also kinda not. The Battlespire is more magical than technological. It's a kind of fortress that exists within a plane between Mundus and Oblivion. Space, arguably. It's a castle that they put in space. It is here that the battle mages of the Shadow Legion receive their training. You know the guards in Oblivion who have the hoods instead of helmets? They're Imperial battle mages. It's possible they trained on the Battlespire, at least some of the older ones. The events of Oblivion take place about 30 years after the events of Battlespire. But then that raises the question, what happened to the Battlespire? Why hasn't Bethesda mentioned it ever since? Why haven't we gone back? Well, hopefully this game answers that very question.
I recall the story of the recovery of the Battlespire, as it was told to me by the son of old Kemir these many years ago. How the legions of Daedra Lord Mehrunes Dagon overran the spire, aided by betrayal. How a young hero from obscure origins entered the Battlespire, proving ground and testing facility for the Shadow Legion, the Imperial Guard, and finding his test was more than he bargained for. Thinking this was only a harmless test of his skills, he enters the spire through the Pillar of Light and finds a hell created by the betrayal of the Legion and the perfidy of Jaeger Tharn, arch-traitor to the Empire. And so, our story begins.
Julian LaFay. Marvin... What? I can't read these. What is this text? That's an intro I like. Short and sweet. Sets up the attitude of the game rather than obliterating us with exposition. But that's not helpful for a YouTube video. Here's the setup. Therein, the antagonist from the Elder Scrolls I Arena, and the epitome of what happens when you keep a theater kid from doing theater, used his power as the false emperor to help summon Dagon's forces into the Battlespire. Dagon had aided Therein in assuming the Imperial throne, so it was only appropriate that Therein return the favor. Once the Shadow Legion lost communications with the Battlespire, they sent an agent to investigate. This agent doesn't return, so the Shadow Legion sends a second person in. Us. They're taking a build a bridge out of a pile of corpses kind of approach.
It's all over!
Upon arriving in the Battlespire, we discover everyone is dead, the place is swarming with Daedra, and the Weirgate, the only way out of the Battlespire, is blocked by Daedric magics. To return home, we'll need to explore even further into the Battlespire, solving puzzles and fighting Dagon's monsters along the way. Thankfully, the agent sent ahead of us didn't die immediately, and actually left behind notes and supplies to help the next poor soul the Shadow Legion throws into the meat grinder. The agent does have a name, by the way, but it's different depending on whether you choose a male or female character. If you pick male, you're following Vatasha Tranel's footsteps. Otherwise, it's Josian Cade. Julian LaFay had said that this was to add a bit of a romance element to the story. He's a sucker for that kind of thing. Personally, I never got that vibe, but that might just be because the plot is presented a bit, obtusely. While I was playing the game, I didn't actually realize that the notes I was reading were from the guy who was sent ahead of us. I might just be dumb. I don't think there's a canon protagonist anyway. I think the implication is that you play as either Vatasha or Josian, kind of like how in Pokemon Emerald, you either play as May or Brendan, and your rival becomes the one that you aren't. That doesn't matter though, because we won't be role-playing Vatasha anyway. We're actually Chip Mom, mother of the Monk of Dibella, and the woman who will teach him everything he knows. About fighting. She also looks like Sigourney Weaver, which is perfect since we'll be fighting abominations in magic space. Character creation is pretty much what you'd expect if you've played Daggerfall, but with a few tweaks here and there. It's still going to take a bit of explaining, and there's not a whole lot happening on screen, so jingle keys. You've got the familiar primary, major, and minor skills, the same attributes we're used to, and an advantages and disadvantages category. What's new is the point box. If you've played Deus Ex, you already know what that's all about. Every choice you make in character creation costs some amount of points, with different choices costing significantly more or less points than other choices. Once you start allocating points, you'll be a bit shocked by how much even a single attribute costs. We have 4,700 points to work with, and one measly level in strength costs 80? What kind of character creation is this? I could barely make any choices. Well, there's a down arrow for a reason. You can remove levels and get points back even if you never added levels to those skills in the first place. That means you can suck points out of all the stats that don't matter. Agility, endurance, and luck, they're all dumb stats in Battlespire. At least, so I've been told. We can chunk them down to 10 without concern. Then there's the skills we can siphon points from. Being a Breton, we start with a bit of a buff to a few magic skills, but the only magic we'll be using is Restoration. All those minor skill points are free for the taking. We can even drop our hand-to-hand level down if need be, because it'll level up on its own really fast. Another oddity I'm sure you've noticed is the Wounds champion. That's our hit points. Calling it Wounds is an interesting choice. I had never seen anything like that. I'm sure it's come up before. Admittedly, I've not played a lot of games. That might be a surprise. My catalog of games I've played is very, very narrow. I got hooked on RuneScape when I was like 11, and that was like the primary game for me for still. I guess the implication is that that's how many wounds we can sustain before dying. Fair enough. We want that as high as possible, 200. Most of our points are going to come from disadvantages. You can forbid certain weights of armor, specific materials, weapon types, and even prohibit spell point regeneration. There's also low tolerances and critical weaknesses to various magical effects. From left to right, we have Sparkles, Butterfly Wings, Powdered Sugar Glaze, Smushed Bug, and Pirates. Advantages, as you'd expect, cost points. But since we're playing as a monk, we'll be able to take several disadvantages that allow us to get several advantages. Our damage output isn't going to be coming from weapons, so we can ban all of them. And since we'll have so much health, we can rely on healing with restoration spells rather than bothering with armor. So we can ban armor completely as well. We'll also be taking every single critical weakness. This nets us a lot of points, and it isn't as much of an issue as you might think, because we're also taking Spell Absorption, with a B, and Increased Magery. tripling our spell points. As long as our magicka isn't full, we can just eat any spell cast at us. We're weak to spells the same way that somebody might be weak to chocolate. They just can't help themselves. Speaking of spells, these also cost character points. You start with no spells whatsoever and must spend points to have them etched into your spellbook or something. Unlike the previous 2 games, there's no spell making in Battlespire, so you're stuck with what they give you. That sounds horribly limiting, I know, but it's actually not as bad as it seems. We'll discuss the details later. Of course, we'll be taking Cure Health, but a spell I really wish I took, a spell I wish I saw, is Teleport. Teleport functions like the anchor spell in Daggerfall. Cast it once to place an anchor, cast it again to teleport back to the anchor. Of course, you can't teleport between levels using the spell, but you can teleport within the level, and there's a bit of backtracking in some of these levels, so it would have been nice. The speedrun uses it heavily. Finally, we can spend points on equipment and magical items. The former is stuff like weapons and armor. The latter is potions and enchanted gear, like armbands that cast Cure Health, or a tunic that casts Cause Damage. Honestly, I just looked up an overpowered build before jumping into this, because I didn't want my class choice to be a hindrance. The game itself is going to be difficult. If none of this matters to you, you can use one of the pre-existing class builds, but if I've learned one thing after playing all of these Bethesda games, it's that Bethesda doesn't know what a good character build is. So, just make a custom class. Once you drop into the world, you'll immediately notice something interesting, especially if you're fresh off of Arena or Daggerfall. Mouse look is enabled by default. In Arena, there was no mouse look, and in Daggerfall, you had to enable the option by navigating to a menu within a menu. But it's 1997, baby, and game developers are beginning to realize the power of the mouse. There is an option to play without mouse look, but I wouldn't recommend it. Besides, that's the least of your worries. There's a huge problem with Battlespire. I don't know what causes it, but it's tied to CPU clock cycles, which is probably one of the most common causes of problems in all of these old games. It's like developers from the 90s didn't expect computers to get any better. Or they did, and they just said, it's a future problem, who cares? I mean, games that come out today might not be playable in 20 years because they made the same problems today. We just don't see the problems that are caused by today's problems because today's problems aren't problems until the future. Worse than it being tied to clock cycles is that the problem isn't even noticeable unless you're actually playing the game. For whatever reason, there's a constant force pushing you in one direction. There's some kind of ethereal wind blowing across the entire game map that's pushing you in that direction, irrespective of the direction you're walking. Sometimes it'll manifest as a slight divergence from a straight line. Other times, it's a running in a dream simulator and you can hardly move. So I'm gonna press W. Right? Oh, now I'm pressing back. Why did that happen? Forward. Backwards at an angle. Going into the game's config files and changing the CPU setting does fix the problem. The mysterious wind is subdued. But then you're stuck playing at a horrendously low frame rate that makes Arena look smooth as butter. It's unfortunate because whichever option we choose, it's gonna make platforming abysmal. And that brings us to the next big issue. Platforming. You don't just press the jump button to jump. No. In Battlespire, you have to hold down the jump button and charge it like you're a cricket. This summons an upside-down pyramid which projects forward from your current position, showing where you're gonna land. Allegedly. For precision platforming, this is great, you might say. It tells you exactly where you're gonna land before you commit to a jump. A few points on that. First of all, it doesn't. But even if it did, it's a band-aid. If your platformer requires what's basically a debug tool to correctly platform, then your platformer is bad. But let's say we accept that the so-called crotch bugle is necessary, that there's no way to make this game without it. It's still bad. So you hold down the jump button, and the pyramid projects outward. It projects outward faster and further if you're moving while it's projecting. This is simulating a running jump. You can jump further if you run before you jump. Interesting implementation, but it misses the mark. First of all, the pyramid only stays at its maximum distance for a brief amount of time. If you need to clear a gap that requires max jump distance, you need to start charging your jump at the correct distance from the edge of the gap, so you hit your maximum jump before the edge. But you don't want to start charging the jump too soon, because if the pyramid is the furthest it can get away from you for too long, it cancels the jump. It kills the concept of running jumps entirely. Oh, and sometimes jumping will just get you wedged into a wall or a ledge, and you're forced to load a previous save. Is this another clock cycle bug, or is this just how the game is? I don't know, but it sucks. Let's talk about the combat. It's about as simple as you would expect coming from a Bethesda game. Click to attack, Keep clicking until the enemy is dead. Well, if you aren't using hand-to-hand, you have to click and then simulate the swing of a weapon with your mouse, similar to Ocarina and Daggerfall. But that's not a real layer of complexity. Ranged has a fun glitch. You can shoot arrows while the game is paused, but the arrows won't travel until the game is unpaused, effectively allowing you to create archery nukes. Certainly an option for those who want to bring the stealth archer back to the 90s. There is a stealth skill, actually. You activate it by moving slowly. When you approach an enemy while moving at half speed or lower, you roll a stealth check. If successful, the enemy won't detect you for the next 5 seconds. After those 5 seconds, the game will perform another stealth check. It's actually a bit more in-depth than you might expect. Your equipment and overall illumination affects how successful you'll be at sneaking. What's the reward for passing all these checks? If you sneak up behind them, you'll do double damage, assuming the backstab roll is also successful. Or you'll instantly kill them. The details on how backstab works are contradictory. Honestly, it's just faster and easier to sprint at enemies and punch them a bunch. You're probably going to miss the backstab anyway, since you have accuracy rolls baked into all your attacks, so you're just adding more dice rolls onto your dice rolls. It wouldn't be so bad if the game actually telegraphed whether your attack landed or not, but it doesn't. It provides less feedback than Morrowind, and I think it's because there's just too many sounds happening all at once. We'll talk about that soon. The magic is interesting. Like I had said, there's no spell making. You're stuck with the spells you picked at the beginning of the game. But that doesn't mean there isn't customization. Rather than crafting new spells, you can just choose to cast the spell the way you want. Say you took continuous damage during character creation. Through your spellbook, you can set the delivery type for the spell, the damage type, and how the spell detonates. So this continuous damage spell can be fire damage on self, frost damage on touch, shock damage in an area at a range, or on a single target, or in an area around yourself, or any other combination you desire. The detonation feature is new. The spell can either detonate when it collides with anything, it can bounce off of surfaces until it hits an enemy, at which point it detonates, or it can be affected by gravity, bouncing like a ball when it collides with the ground until it comes to a stop, or until it connects with an enemy and detonates. It's like Daggerfall's magic system, but you can spell make on the go. A playthrough as a mage could be fun, if it weren't for the fact that I've already played this game and have no desire to play again. The fact that I have to open it back up after I narrate this script so I can get B-roll scares me. So the combat's bland at best, and the platforming is janky. Surely the atmosphere and sound design must redeem the game in some way, right? The sound effects aren't the most pleasant I've ever heard, specifically the punch sounds. Maybe this is why it's so hard to tell if my attacks are making contact or not. Maybe there is a sound effect that plays when you miss, but I can't hear it because it's buried under all this chaos. In spite of this, the sounds creatures make when they die are excellent. The Vermi sound like they're being sucked back into the formless void. And the Dramora's scream is full of nothing but indignant regret. Yeah, it's all a bunch of stock effects you've heard in 1,000 different games. Yeah, it wasn't designed specifically for Battlespire. Yeah, I'm imposing my own interpretation on the game. But I'm in the camp of art isn't finished just because the artist put down the paintbrush. My interpretation changes the art. It changes it just for me, but it changes it nonetheless. And that's the beauty of art, both for the artists and the art consumer. Half the work is done by the other guy. I wish the skeletons still had their terrifying Daggerfall screech. But that death sound. And the animation on their deaths is great too. It feels like we're fighting otherworldly beings, rather than corporeal creatures. Them dropping a sack of loot upon discorporation is a bit immersion breaking, but you gotta suspend disbelief sometimes. Speaking of animations, look at the animation for casting a healing spell. It is beautiful. Why is it so good compared to everything else in this game? Go watch the VOD if you don't believe me, but several times I had to remark how crisp and clean it is in an otherwise rough game. I love it. Anyway, back to the sound. The game is fully voice acted, barring the protagonist lines of course, and you can speak to just about any NPC in the game, even the Daedra that want to kill you. Usually it'll just end with the Daedra berating you, and then continuing combat, but sometimes they'll beckon to you before attacking. With the right dialogue choices, and I think some skill checks, you can avoid combat altogether. You can even convince them to help you. I suspect it's an iteration on Daggerfall's language skills. In Daggerfall, you could pacify an enemy if you succeeded a language skill check. It's not an active thing you could do. It just sometimes made it so enemies weren't aggressive. You wouldn't even know why, because the game wouldn't tell you. Daggerfall Unity lets you know when it happens, but the original didn't. In Battlespire, you can actually speak with creatures in hopes to get the same effect. It's active and more engaging. Arguably two things you want a video game to be. By the way, if you ever see shitposts comparing the number of skills in each Elder Scrolls game, and how the number has shrunk since Daggerfall, and that means the games are objectively worse, remind the person who posted it that 9 of the 35 skills in Daggerfall are useless language skills. Literally a quarter of the skills are pointless, at least. And if you really want to be cute, tell them to compare the number of perks between each game. It goes from 0 to 0 to 0 to 110 to 180. I'm the devil's advocate. Fight me if you dare. The analogy implies that Todd is the devil. Back on track. The game being fully voice acted doesn't mean the voice acting is good. I wouldn't even say the voice acting is bad because the actors are bad at voice acting. I'd say maybe the casting was a poor choice, or maybe the post-processing, because some of the characters in this do not sound the way that you think they should. At all. Place your bets. What do you think this jacked demon sounds like?
So, you're Cade. You've made quite a nuisance of yourself. I hope you don't mind if I summon minions to rend you limb from limb.
I'm not even going to point out the poor enunciation because I'm pretty shit at that sometimes. But why didn't they just add some kind of effect to his voice? The simplest thing would be to have 2 audio tracks and have one pitch down a few octaves and just play them together. It gives it a demonic feel, maybe shift one over so they're out of phase slightly. I assume that audio technology existed at the time.
So, you're Cade. You've made quite a nuisance of yourself. I hope you don't mind if I summon minions to rend you limb from limb.
And this is the thanks I get. Betrayed, tortured, sucked dry, murdered. Then, for good measure, they rip out my soul and set it adrift in this godforsaken hole!
This one ain't bad, but I can't not hear Lakeen from Redguard. That's the problem with using 2 voice actors.
Master Cade, this won't take long. I have something for you, and a few words. You amuse us. It may suit us to preserve you from time to time. Do not presume upon this favor. The moment you are foolish enough to rely on our aid, we shall withhold it and seek our amusement elsewhere.
Unsurprisingly, this voice acting is great because it's Jeff Baker, Dagothar himself. The best delivery has to be the protagonist. Every time she jumps, it's the same pained yelp. Finally, a game where the main character is over 30. So the sound effects aren't terribly out of the ordinary for a game from the 90s. There were like 3 libraries that companies used. Where have you heard this sound before? Doom? Banjo-Kazooie? Oblivion? That camel effect has gotten a lot of mileage. Oh, and the spellcast effect in Morrowind is the same exact sound as the fishing pole in Ocarina of Time. Both a type of casting. I'm sure modern games still use third-party sound libraries, but it seems that they don't have as much overlap nowadays. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention. Maybe it's just more subtle. Maybe there are just so many more sounds in modern games that it kinda blends together, and it becomes difficult to pinpoint exact sound effects that are identical between 2 games. I don't know. But something I do know is unique between games, all games, or at least it should be, is the music. Every level in Battlespire has its own music track. There are 7 levels, so there are 7 music tracks. Technically there are 8 levels, but one of the levels is split in 2, so it's kind of 1 level, but it's technically, there's 7 levels. The best word I could use to describe the music is alien, but not for the reasons you might think. When I say alien, I mean with respect to the rest of the series. Even going forward after Battlespire, with Redguard, with Morrowind, with Oblivion, with Skyrim, with ESO, and even with Blades and Legends, this music is nothing like them. The music in all the other games, especially 3, 4, and 5, have melodies. I'm not a musicologist, so I don't know the specific terminology for these kinds of concepts, but if you take a track like Caprice in Morrowind, Harvest Dawn in Oblivion, and Secunda in Skyrim, they all have a voice. They all have their own personality. It might just be the case that Jeremy Soule is really good at making music. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. Regardless of how you feel about him as a person, he's good at making music. It can't just be a Jeremy Soule thing, though. Even the soundtracks of Arena, Daggerfall, and Redguard have a similar quality, and they weren't made by him. The Battlespire soundtrack, it's almost lobotomized. And this isn't a slight. Within the context of Battlespire, within the world of Battlespire, across the levels and butted against the overall themes of the game, it works. The dreary and occult atmosphere of every stage would be ruined if the music were anything else, and the lack of combat music cements the weight of the soundtrack. There's a heavy emotionlessness to the music that reflects how hollow the Battlespire is, a once bustling training facility now devoid of mortals. Listen to the first track that plays on the first stage. It's also the title theme. It sounds like it's coming from the end of a long, cold corridor, almost mournful. It's your first moments on the Battlespire. You, the apprentice, came in not knowing what to expect, but it surely wasn't this. The third stage takes place in the Soul Cairn. We'll discuss that fact a bit later. The music, of course, includes the organ, or a MIDI organ, an instrument which is inextricably linked with horror. You can blame that on Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor and 1931's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Adding to the spooky aspects of the track, about halfway through, all you'll be able to notice is what can only be described as heavy breathing, like there's someone looming over your shoulder. Stage 5 is the Chimera of Desolation, a wide open area covered in fog. When I first heard this track, I thought it was the Stage 1 track being reused. It has a similar texture? Again, I'm not a musicologist. Maybe I'm doing too much English class interpretation here. This one sounds wet. There's this white noise in the background. It ebbs, raising and lowering in volume throughout the entire track, a bit like a tide. This level is surrounded by water. Could also be that the ambient sounds and the music tracks were just merged together, but Oh, and before I forget, not even the soundtrack is free from bugs. The final stage has music, but it never plays. The patch that claimed to fix a game-breaking bug on Stage 5, which doesn't actually, also disabled Stage 7's music. No idea why. It's not game-breaking, but it felt weird not to mention it. For regulars on this channel, you've probably already noticed that this video is in a bit of a different style than is typical. Normally we just do a playthrough and discuss these topics as they come up, rather than having it organized into a chapter-like structure. And if you didn't notice that, it's because you're new. Or you're already asleep. Jokes aside, sometimes you gotta experiment and do things a little differently. But now it's time to take a look at the actual narrative of the game. It's time to enter the Battlespire, solve all the puzzles, collect all the doodads and gizmos, and travel from portal to portal, dealing with bugs and fighting bugs as we make our way back to Tamriel. The Shadow Legion sent Josiah Cade to the Battlespire in order to figure out why the Dreamsleeve communication network went offline. Genuinely, they used the Dreamsleeve, the place where souls go to be recycled, to send wireless communications. It's like using the karmic wheel to send an email. When Cade didn't return, they decided to send another idiot. Us. Canonically, Vitasha Tranel. But remember, we're playing as Chip Mom, the mother of the Monk of Dibella. Baby. When we arrive, we find that the place is devoid of battle mages, but there are corpses, and Daedra. I think they might be responsible. We also notice the Weir Gate, our only means of teleporting out of this place, is blocked by mysterious floating Daedric runes. In order to relay this information back to the Shadow Legion, we need to figure out how to dispel those runes and step into the Weir Gate. Otherwise, we're never going to return home. We find a letter left behind by Josiah Cade. He says that he's going to try to get a disguise and escape in the confusion. He doesn't really give us any direction as to what we're supposed to do, though. There are a few interesting things we'll come across as we explore this level. The first is when we kill some enemies, they'll drop sigils that look a lot like the floating sigils in this level. Most of these sigils do nothing, or basically nothing. You use the item and you become ethereal, making you temporarily unkillable, but also prevents you from doing any damage. What's the point? There are other sigils which allow passage through the floating sigils. Think of them like keys. They look exactly the same as the useless sigils, so you pretty much gotta check all of them to make sure you're not leaving an important one behind. We'll also find red buttons lying about, and when you push them, they make 2 blue cylinders touch. This game doesn't work. Finally, you may find some cogs on enemies, but let's start with the blue cylinders first. These are anchors. It's not incredibly obvious what these things do until we find a plaque left behind by someone named CV. It says that all the anchors must be conjoined to assure the safety and stability of the spire. If they're all unloosed, destruction will follow, and the battle spire will depart the flux that keeps all sides of its nature in unity. That is, the anchors anchor the place in reality, and if we unanchor it, we're gonna zero sum. Since 4 of them are untouching, it would be wise if we went around and got them to touch. We don't want to stop existing before getting out of this place. And that's not a euphemism. Zero summing is when you just the universe unmakes you. You don't die, you just and you're gone. In our exploration, we find another note from Josian saying that one of the battle mages may still be alive, Clarintavius, but Josian hasn't seen him. He hasn't had time to look for any secret doors, hinting to us that there are secret doors. The Daedra were looking for him because he knows something about some kind of machine, a broken machine, perhaps a machine that needs cogs. In one of the chambers, we find a massive, dead dragon, and nearby a note from the person who is about to mount said dragon and fly out of this place. I guess the idea is that dragons can fly through dimensions, as well as fly through the air, but the Daedra got to them first and skeletonized the dragon. Ooh, maybe this is laying the groundwork for dragons losing their skin when they die, in Skyrim. Maybe something ate its soul, so it turned to bones. And people say Skyrim retcon stuff. Skyrim took something straight from Battlespire, straight from 1990-7, and added it to the game. God damn it, Todd, you did it again. I'm trying to think about this game from the perspective of someone who is just coming from Daggerfall, and how wildly different this is, thematically, aesthetically, and mechanically. There are no dragons in Daggerfall. There are no dragons in Arena. You hear about dragons, but you never see them. The Dragonling enemies don't count, they're not dragons. This is your first exposure to a dragon in this world, and it's dead, and huge. Must have been interesting. Okay, I'm walking into the breeze. Oh my god. The breeze is so strong I can't move. That is ridiculous. It likely wasn't intentional. It's just a weird issue with modern CPU cycles, as I mentioned earlier, but it is really annoying. Playing Battlespire, you really gotta want it. You gotta be getting something out of it. And it's not fun, because if you're having fun, you don't need Battlespire, you need therapy. Is jumping possible through the breeze? No. Aetherius is quite a remarkable place. Your perceptions will fool you. The Battlespire is not for the light of heart. Because trying to walk to the bathroom is a fucking nightmare. Near the dead dragon, we find our first sigil of entry. This sigil won't let us into the Weirgate, but it will let us cross the bridge near the Weirgate, allowing us further access into the level where we can collect more of the items we need. What? I literally got shoved. This place is haunted. Stop pushing me. I'm stuck. This has to be a correctable problem, otherwise no one would play this game. No one did. This is why you save frequently. Not because you might die. In fact, I think I died once through this entire playthrough, at the end of the game. 9 reloads out of 10, it was because of this game's weird physics. Could this also be a CPU issue? I don't know, so I won't hold that against the game. And now I can't move. I'm holding D. Oh, little bit. Oh. That Daedra we were just fighting, the one that died off screen by throwing a fireball at its feet, it drops one of the cogs we need, and I didn't realize this at the time. I spent quite a while running around this place, trying to find that final cog. And then when I realized it was on that Daedra, it took a minute to actually find where it dropped its loot. It half fell off a cliff. If it fell into the void, the game would have been soft-locked. There's a point in our exploration where we come across Lord Methats, the leader of this local cadre of Daedra. He's stationed around a teleporter, and when we step on it, we get taken to an apartment owned by somebody with huge feet. Unfortunately, we're stopped by a door that requires an answer to a riddle, as the ox turns in plowing. What could that mean? Well, we haven't met Clarintavius yet, and something tells me that this is his office. We should probably go find him. He's around here somewhere, hiding. In one of the rooms, there's a machine that requires the cogs. When we slot all the cogs into the machine, the door across from it will open. That is the Star Galley. Star Gallery crib opening mechanism operation with the permission of His Honor, the Venerable Artificer, is expressly forbidden. Gaze upon this device and its subtle workings, and tremble with wonder by the grace of the gifts of Clarintavius Valisius. Thus the Star Galley of made fast and is cured thereby. This looks like a comment that you would see on Reddit when somebody has their comment history changed and it's just random words. This is what this is. Also in this room are a bunch of file cabinets. Regular-ass 1990s file cabinets. Welcome to the space station that trains battle mages. Make sure to collate.
At last! Oh, joy! Saved! Saved! Oh, I knew you'd come. I waited so long in all this desperate, terrible nightmare.
Who in Mara's hat are you? What? Yeah, something you'll notice is that the protagonist's lines are really dumb. That one's weird, but they get worse. And not nonsensically worse, but cringe worse.
No legions?
Clarintavius is a bit disappointed that we showed up alone and without an entire legion at our command. But he has to make do with what he's got. He gives us the password to his chambers and says we should sever the final anchor that's there. It would mean the destruction of the Battlespire, but at least it wouldn't fall into the enemy's hands. We obviously aren't going to do that. The password is Boostrafiden. What is Boostrafiden? It's the writing style where, unlike our typical writing style, you write from left to right, then right to left, then left to right, and right to left. That way your eyes never have to jump across the page while you're reading, much like the way an ox plows a field. I never understood why riddle doors exist. If the point is to keep somebody out, don't give them a hint. In his chambers, we find another cog, and alongside that cog is a note from Clarintavius himself. In it, he explains that the Great Star Galley will teleport us to the high halls and librarium of the college. While feigning vile possession and fellowship with the enemy, his words, he's verbose, he dismantled the opening mechanism for the Star Galley and secreted away the 5 cogs. The note also says that all of the anchors must be conjoined, otherwise the galley won't have enough power. I think the idea is that you would find Clarintavius first, and then come to his chambers and read this note, so you know what you're supposed to do. But I feel like you would have kinda stumbled into everything along the way by that point. Whatever. The note also mentions that we'll find the staff of Typos Sophia on his corpse. Of course, he's not dead yet, so the staff is nowhere to be found. This isn't a mandatory diversion, but if you really wanted a stick that grants magic resistance, it is an option. He'll give it to us if we kill Lord Methats. We already did that, so we take his pauldron as proof. Clarintavius isn't too happy that we didn't heed his advice and kill ourselves, but Chipmom assures him by saying, "Aha, you little can see with whom you speak, for I have just recently been awarded 2nd place in the Imperial Martial Arts competition." What is this dialogue? Anyway, we give him Methat's pauldron, he gives us his staff, and he says we're doomed to fail if we progress deeper into the Battlespire. Whatever. We slot the final cog into the doohickey, open our way into the Star Galley, and step on the floor that turns your vision into a kaleidoscope. And that's level 1. Our reward is 600 character points to spend wherever we so desire. What's interesting about this is that our allocations aren't permanent. We can remove levels from our skills and attributes to increase the number of points we have available. You could spend your time on a stage just grinding up one easy skill, only to bring it back down to 5 and place those points into a harder skill to grind. You can't raise a skill above its governing attribute though, so there are some limitations. Also, I hadn't mentioned it earlier, but restoration is governed by personality. In Daggerfall, it's willpower. In Morrowind, it's willpower. In Oblivion, it's willpower. I don't get it. There aren't any social skills in this game, so I guess they had to give personality some use. Illusion, restoration, and mysticism are personality skills in Battlespire. You might argue that illusion kinda makes sense, but I would say someone relying on illusion magics to manipulate others wouldn't need high personality. Anyway, onward to level 2A, Caitiff. Administration, Labs, and Library. I've never said Caitiff out loud. I don't know what that word means. an archaic or literary word for a cowardly, base, or despicable person. Shortly into the level, we find another note left by Josiah Cade. His disguise has been working, fortunately for him, and he's been sticking close to the boss Daedra Samir Jabran, traveling through the Battlespire with Samir via his mass teleportation artifact. He also mentions that the Daedra are sloppy, and it may be caused by internal political conflicts. Perhaps that could be to our benefit. Also, as a heads up, we got spider Daedra on this level. They're like centaurs, but spider instead of horse. They only have 4 legs though, making them half as unsettling as regular spiders. Right? Is that how that works? I love that. It's always funny. Zenaida Nakara is the leader of the Vermi clan that's infesting the Battlespire, and she's shocked upon our arrival. She could have sworn all the battle mages were dispatched already. We adopt Clarintavius' strategy of pretending to be enthralled by the Daedra, and claim that we were sent ahead by Lord Methats himself. We're here to help. Zenaida says everything is under control, except a pack of scamps stole their Void Guide. Fair enough. We'll go ahead and retrieve that for you. Arena was full of riddles. Daggerfall abandoned that shtick, and Battlespire brought it right back. Armor bright, gleaming white, a single rank, their faces blank. Now hid by night, now bold by light, bright red the land, where soldiers stand. The answer? Battlefield. Future JBN here. The answer is teeth. I don't know why I said battlefield. Why did I write down battlefield? Teeth makes more sense. Beyond that riddle door, we find what appears to be a young child from the town of Bedrock, Rishal. Obviously, she's some kind of Daedra. If we bring her the very Void Guide Zenaida was looking for, she'll reward us with a surprise. Spoilers, it's a key to the next level. Behind her is another riddle door. Load-bearer, warrior, spirited, brave. Fleetfoot, iron-shod, faithful one, slave. The answer? Horse. And the door rises. But there's a Daedric sigil barrier on top of the teleportation platform. We can't leave just yet.
Yes, I love to talk while I fight. What shall we talk about? Wounds? Hot, dirty monkey love? Splinters? Burn?
We recall that Josiah's note said to keep an eye out for hidden levers, such as the one behind this inconspicuous coffin. And I don't mean inconspicuous ironically, it's literally nothing about it would lead you to think it could move. And even the switch behind it doesn't look like a switch, it looks like a shield with a little nubbin on it. That switch opens up a room containing Perthin Vorn, a unique spider Daedra who, like many other NPCs in Battlespire, reappears in Morrowind's Tamriel Rebuilt mod. The creators of that mod love referring back to Battlespire. We kill him and take the Met sigil of entry off his corpse sack. Now, when we return to the spider Daedra who wanted to have sex with us, we can pass through the barrier and punch it to death. Pulling the switch on the wall is supposed to open a hidden compartment, but it takes several tries because the game just decides it doesn't want to do what it's supposed to do. Behind the wall, we find the Void Guide. Behold its azure splendor.
Goody, goody. Give me the Void Guide right now.
In exchange for the Void Guide, Rishal gives us a Zir sigil of entry, which dispels the very sigil behind her, opening up the path to level 2B, where friendly fire immediately obliterates one of the Dremora. So at this point, after just 1.5 stages, you should already have a decent idea of what Battlespire's gameplay is. You show up, kill Daedra, find the sigils of entry, collect something or multiple somethings scattered throughout the stage, and use those somethings to teleport to the next stage. On this part of Stage 2, we need to find 4 pieces of a broken Void Guide. There's actually 5 available to get. We have choices. In the Forge section of the administrative offices, we activate this out-of-place mace on the wall, revealing a hidden chamber, in which we find a lion statue and an actual mace. But it's not just any mace. This is Scourge, Blessed of Malakath. Leader of the Spider Daedra, Wonshala Carrion, will trade us a piece of the Void Guide for Scourge and the special keyword that unlocks its power. We find loads of scrolls in the library, and one of them contains the keyword Wonshala is looking for. Another scroll notes that because Scourge is so potent when used against Daedra, Malakath had cursed the weapon, so if any Darkkin were to invoke its powers, a void hole would open and purge him into Oblivion's void streams, from thence to pathfind back to the real and unreal worlds in the full order of time. That is gonna kill him. Something tells me Wonshala doesn't know this.
You have finally brought me Scourge and its keyword. I will now hand you the piece of the Void Guide with one hand, while I accept Scourge. I invoke thee in the name of equality. Yes!
Oh my god, is Battlespire woke?
And with this power, I may now rid myself of your irksome stink. But What? Oh! Ah, God!
And we get one of the Void Guide pieces we need. All Daedra who invoke Scourge go back to Oblivion. She didn't know this somehow? Well, she didn't know the word. Did you know it? I wouldn't have expected that to happen. What even kind of Daedra is she? Point I? In the guard barracks? Is it in here? Ah! It's under the box! Why would you know to do that? Are you supposed to try to move everything? That is stupid.
Sneaky lying man thing. Sneaks and cheats us, hurts us. Now we catch it. Pull its arms hard. Pop!
Why do they wish to talk? They deserve nothing but my ire. There we go. That's 3. Stop talking to me. Aha. With all 4 pieces in our possession, we make our way to the Voidgate Chamber, have a chat with Samir Jabran, the Dremora with weird voice acting we talked about earlier. Greetings.
So, you're Cade.
Oh.
You've made quite a nuisance of yourself. I hope you don't mind if I summon minions to rend you limb from limb.
I'm an accountant. I'm Samir Jabran, ruler of this place. Drop the Void Guide pieces into the Melissa and Doug children's puzzle, and level 2 complete. Where we teleport into next. Welcome to the Soul Cairn. Yes, the Soul Cairn, a realm that wouldn't return until 2012 with Skyrim's Dawnguard DLC. It looks a little different here, but this could just be a different part of the Soul Cairn. There's no reason why these realms have to be homogeneous. A note left behind by our noble predecessor says the Daedra here are led by Lord something or other Moath. Josiah also warns us not to fool with the Wraiths. They are invulnerable, unable to be killed or destroyed. Even the Daedra are being harried by the things. These aren't the Wraiths. These are the Wraiths. The other things were just ghosts. A ghost is a person that dies. A Wraith is a skeleton that dies. We have a new enemy type, a Morphoid.
Come here, little manling.
What makes them special? I don't know. I punched it until it died. Further into the Soul Cairn, we stumble upon a dock and a dinghy. I'm surprised there's even water in this place. At the far end of the stream is yet another note from Josiah. He's been found out. He fought off the Daedra who saw through his disguise, but now the rest of them are on the lookout. Fortunately, he found the gateway to the next realm. Although he isn't sure how it works, he figures if he waits until a courier passes through, he can slip in and follow. The next realm awaiting us is Shade Perilous, Nocturnal's realm. An oddity. Dagon and Nocturnal are enemies. Why would they be working together? Perhaps the arrangement isn't mutual. Also, Nocturnal's realm is the Evergloam, according to later games. Maybe Shade Perilous is a subset of the Evergloam. Nearby, we find the Ute sigil of entry Josiah left behind for us, and we also find the spirit of Paxti Bitor, the man responsible for all this, or the liaison for all this. Saranangata, at the behest of Jaeger Tharn, promised Paxti the world if he opened up a portal into the Battlespire. He accepted the bribe, but the Daedra betrayed him, sucked his soul dry, and left him in the Soul Cairn. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Eventually we come to a chamber containing several coffins, inside of which are little gems that look a lot like the healing crystals scattered throughout the other stages. Activating the gems reveals, however, that these are actually the rulers of this realm, the Ideal Masters.
Who disturbs our rest?
Hi. Beings who have eschewed their mortal forms and transcended to something else. They aren't incredibly helpful, speaking cryptically at best, and this is only if you ask them the correct questions in the correct order.
You are not invited here. Why do you disturb our rest?
Otherwise, they grow tired of you bothering them and refuse to speak any further.
Unless you join our service, we offer you no aid. Affairs of mortals are not our concern. Each mote of mana spent diminishes our eternity. Go, and trouble me no more. But you speak with our brethren, who perhaps better recall wearing flesh, and who may look more generously upon your request.
If they did continue to speak with us, we would explain that Dagon has been using the Soul Cairn as a staging ground for their invasion of the Battlespire. Although the Ideal Masters don't care about mortal affairs, they do care that Dagon is plundering their realm, and so they're willing to assist in our vengeance by providing information. What we have to do is find 3 control rods placed throughout the cairn and bring them to the gate, at which point the portal will open and we can move on to Shade Perilous. The rods are pretty easy to miss, but at least they're not identical to the other pillars nearby. At the gate, we flip the switches, plunk the rods into the rod hole, speak our destination to the voice-activated door, and... Shade Perilous is a bit different than the previous levels. It still follows the standard find sigil, pass barrier philosophy of level design, like Doom or Chip's Challenge, but unlike earlier levels, we're going to be helping the locals. Does he have a mustache? Is that a demon with a mustache? I've never seen any depiction of demons with mustaches. They always have beards or goatees. It's Albert Einstein screaming, yeah. The nocturnal shrikes are native to Shade Perilous, and at some point in the past they provided refuge to a clan of seducers. When Dagon invaded this realm, he used his forces to subjugate several members of the clanless seducers, but many ended up siding with him willingly, sprouting wings from their back and being equipped with cruel crescent blades. These are the creatures on the cover art. This is information you piece together as you explore Shade Perilous and talk to the Daedra within, specifically when you meet with Deianira Catrice, a subaltern to Nocturnal.
Never before has a Daedra pleaded with a mortal, but I beg of you to turn from the sight of my wretchedness.
I'm here to free you and save the Shade Perilous from the invaders.
JCL. Her memory haunts me. She is gone to me. I cannot feel the traces of her in my mind. No fragment of her lingers. Oh, JCL, forgive me. It was my foolish pride that cost my mistress her realm. In my vanity, I pleaded their case with her. The seducers are lordless warriors, and might shift allegiance at will. I thought they might remain loyal to JCL, once they knew her honest and honorable nature. But the seducers were in turn seduced. Dagon rules them now. Though to my everlasting shame, I fear some seducers went to him willingly. These seducers Dagon has remade in the image of his own greed and treachery. Oh, all this horror is my fault, and I must atone for it.
So here's the deal. Overcome with shame and sorrow, JCL Morgan drove her spirit into the Dream Sleeve and hid herself behind the Night Portal. But when Dagon's forces stopped the flow of nocturnal mana, all portals out of Shade Perilous snapped closed. There's a whole lot of stuff we gotta do to free JCL, but it's really just a bunch of busy work. Pull levers, push buttons, spell out the word dusk using the Daedric alphabet. This should pull JCL's spirit out of the Dream Sleeve. What? Why would they put a tree in jail? Oh, these supposed to be windows. I'm the one in jail.
We think you'll find this Quam Amulet of Passage useful. Now, if you have no further questions, I'll be leaving.
Okay, thanks. When we actually find JCL, she's more or less catatonic. Even if we mention we're here on behalf of Deianira, she simply wallows in her own self-pity.
Ah, Deianira. Her longing will not cease even in the face of overwhelming loss. How like a mortal she is. But no. The thought of her tears is almost enough to shake this mantle of anguish from my shoulders, almost, but not enough. No. The only joy left in me now is the thought that the Nocturnals will scourge the Dagon until the magicka drips in rivulets from his hollow eye sockets, twins to the tears I cannot cry. Farewell.
We return to Deianira and let her know JCL's soul has returned to Shade Perilous, but Deianira senses her mistress is still dispirited. Nocturnal shrikes, she says, like to nurse their misery. We'll need to hit her with an even greater loss to arouse her from this stupor. That makes sense, I guess. But Deianira doesn't know what matters to JCL more than the realm itself, and she knows JCL better than anyone. We suggest that, perhaps, JCL holds Deianira's welfare higher than all else. If Deianira cast herself into oblivion, set her soul adrift in the waters of Creatia, then JCL may awaken from her despair and help us rescue her realm. Deianira gives us a soul dagger, which we use to strike her down.
Into the dagger I shall pour my hope and longings, which you must bear as a token to my mistress, that she will know what I have done for her.
Hey JCL, check out this knife. I use it to kill your girlfriend.
Ah, she is gone. Gone. I should tear your beating heart out and force you to eat it in tiny bites, one wriggling, beating bite each century. I should flay the skin from your body and hurl your living carcass into the sea of my salty tears.
She seems a bit vengeful, but after some negotiation, she accepts what's done is done. And she provides some interesting lore about what happens to Daedra when they die.
Daedra do not really die. Not as you know death. But we can sacrifice ourselves to oblivion, as she did. Oblivion is existence and self-awareness without the ability to see, hear, or affect the world. For an immortal, it is hell. Unspeakable pain and horror. Absolute loss. Eventually, we do return, but not all return as they were. There is sickness, madness, change.
And because we've helped JCL, she promises to return the favor. All we need to do is summon her. That'll be relevant later. To find the portal out of Shade Perilous, she tells us to find the nearby energy field and speak to it the words Jamekwe. But actually making it there is virtually insane. It's one thing to have to platform in this game, but it's another thing entirely to have to platform while being attacked by surface-to-air Daedra. Why? Why sideways? You prick. Something you never have to do. Did she say to touch the torch? You... I'm okay. She's got stuff like a basketball. Oops. Okay, that was my fault. Oh, I'm going the wrong way anyway. Cool. No, fuck you. I'm sorry. Are they supposed to just pop in and out of existence, or is that a bug? Like, what's the... Why did I go left? I pressed D to go right, and I went left. How do they not just, like, kill everybody at Bethesda after making this game? Get out of here, fly. I'm losing my mind. Is this it? Oh. What was the password? Jamiroquai? On the other side of the energy field is a Dremora Oathkin who wishes to speak with us. He says Josiah Cade has been taken to Mehrunes Dagon's hunting lodge, but his clan is willing to help free him. How? When? Why? He's not at liberty to say, but he does leave us with a warning.
There will be a hunt, and you are the prey. Escape Shade Perilous, and you will be hunted within the Chimera of Desolation by the rights of the innocent quarry. In the hunt, there are rules. Turn those rules to your use, and on the ground seek hidden resources. Seek a thing that once was a man. On him is the mantle of distinction. Be patient, heed him, and learn.
But what he doesn't tell us is that the next stage is bugged like all get out. So bugged that it can corrupt your save. We arrive on the dock of a misty island, greeted by a rhyming dark seducer who tells us, in order to win the hunt and escape the isle, we must find the 6 keys scattered about the place. What she doesn't tell us is that we're being hunted by unkillable Herns, one of which, Hern Egahirn, is carrying the 6th key. Seems a bit unfair, but I'm sure we'll pull something out of our ass. As well as the 6 keys, we'll also stumble across pieces of the Savior's Hide armor set. There are 6 pieces in total, and we'll need each one if we want to escape. While we collect all this crap, let me explain how the game-breaking bug works, or at least how I understand it to work. When the game loads into Stage 5 after quitting to DOS, for whatever reason, it adds 20 object entries for containers. These take up about 58 kilobytes of space. If you save, close the game, then reopen it, it'll add another 58 kilobytes worth of objects. Eventually, there will be too much space taken up by these objects, and the save will no longer open. What makes this more insidious is that the game hard closes when your health hits 0. You get a little cutscene of a goofy skeleton with eyeballs, and then it drops to DOS. It's like the consequences for being bad at the game persist through the saves. How meta. This was a problem back in 1997 too. According to UESP, Bethesda had posted about this multiple times on Usenet, offering temporary workarounds until they could write up a patch. You load a clean save, any clean save, then, while you're in the game, playing that save, you load the dirty save, and that should allow you to play as normal. The easiest thing to do, however, is to just not close the game. Beat the stage in one sitting. Don't die. But if Bethesda was working on a patch, why is it still an issue? Did they never actually patch it? Well, yes and no. They didn't actually fix the issue, they just increased the amount of entries a save could hold before the bug became a problem. How do you fix a leaking roof? Get a bigger bucket. So you may have noticed how different this stage looks compared to all the others. It's not grim and foreboding like the previous 4, or at least not as grim and foreboding. And it's outdoors, with several buildings we're free to enter. It's theorized that this is actually why the game-breaking bug only exists on this level. There's a lot of cells within cells. So this stage, the Chimera of Desolation, used to be Casely Island, a small island off the coast of Northmoor in High Rock. A Durrani conjurer by the name of Khmer Gragan managed to successfully trick Dagon. As punishment, the prince scooped up the entire island and thrust it into the void, killing all its inhabitants, save the very conjurer who dared fool the Daedra. Khmer was then cursed with eternal life, but not eternal youth. An immortal conjurer who once managed to defeat Dagon? Finding him might prove useful. The scroll outlining this information also mentions the armor of the Savior's hide was created by Daedra Lord Malakath. Later lore attributes it to Hircine. Either Hircine crafted it himself from the hide of one of his werewolves, or he gave part of his hide to the first mortal to escape his hunting grounds, which was then used to create the armor. Oh no, a retcon. Let's be honest, the Hircine stuff is more interesting anyway. Besides, no one knows how Daedra work anyway. Malakath is made out of poop, and he might be 3 guys. And not to bury the lead, but this scroll that outlines all this information is in the same room as Khmer.
You'll be wanting my armor of the Savior's hide.
See, he tells us to get the full set of the Savior's hide. He also shares with us how to defeat Dagon.
I banished Dagon by invoking his protonymic. His protonymic, like a mortal wizard's true name, the focus of incantatory magics, the short hair.
We ask him what the protonymic is, but he says it won't help.
Since his reemergence from oblivion, he has surely added a neonymic to protect himself against me and anyone else who gets his protonym.
But we press him to humor us anyway.
Lekelaga.
Lekelaga. We'll have to remember that. He also told us we'd need the Spear of Bitter Mercy to defeat the Hern that's keeping us trapped here. Yet another thing we gotta collect from somewhere on the map. This game is one big scavenger hunt. The spear is actually kept inside a spear case that Khmer will only open if we get the full set of the Savior's armor. Now it's time for the dumbest part of this stage. There's an island to the northeast with 2 pieces of the armor on it, but that island is inaccessible since the drawbridge is raised. So how do we cross the ravine? We use the conveniently placed hot friggin' air balloon. Why? Worst of all, it crawls through the air. Must be the wind. At least when we reach the island, we can lower the drawbridge and never have to deal with that dumbass balloon again. Why is there a hot air balloon in this? What? When have hot air balloons existed in this universe? They never came back. Airships is fine. Hot air balloons is weird. What is this, Robur the Conqueror? We grab the 2 final pieces of armor, equip the entire set, which we can do even though we forbade armor at the start of the game. I don't know why. Return to Khmer with the spear case, retrieve the Spear of Bitter Mercy from within the spear case, and use it to finally kill those pesky Herns that have been harassing us. That we can equip the spear is odd too, but I'm not going to question it. It counts as a long blade, by the way. Off to kill Hern Eggahern. He's back on that island in the northeast. Isn't backtracking fun?
I am the huntsman. I hunt you in accordance with the laws of the wild hunt. Tremble before your death.
That's a good voice. Not that other voice that we heard from that other Daedra, where he's like, I'm the guy who wants the sigil stone. And who are you? Oh, that was easy. Now that we got all the pieces of the armor and all 6 keys, we enter the Temple of Daedric Rites, climb up to the top levels, and jump into the super obvious portal in front of us. Yeah, that wooden platform was a portal. We've arrived at the penultimate stage, the Havoc Wellhead. It's a pretty simple stage, short too, especially compared to Shade Perilous and the Chimera of Desolation. The first issue I have with this level is this little puzzle here. How do you open this giant set of doors? You bump into the wooden pillar, knocking it down, and throwing the door open. How the hell would you know to do that? Did you know Clanfear can talk? Hello.
We smell flesh. Flesh is wrong.
And also the Daedra have flying saucers, which actually isn't more absurd than the medieval castle spaceship. I think I encountered a pretty serious bug, but I'm not sure if it's just because the game is janky like WoW. So after fiddling with switches and buttons, typical Battlespire stuff, this portcullis is supposed to open, but for whatever reason, it didn't. By sheer happenstance, I tried activating the portcullis like it was a door, and I got sucked through into the next cell. So maybe it's just a door with a unique texture? Maybe it's not supposed to visually open? Well, we'll come back to that. In this chamber, we'll find a rather important-looking Dremora, Imago Storm. He better not have... He better sound like this, not, "Hi, how are you?" Swear to God.
Thank you for coming. I regret the disturbance you've caused, though in your place, I might have thought it excusable.
Okay. He has a proposal for us.
You think I am ambitious. My interest is purely in the welfare of the clan. Dagon's tolerance of the antics of Zivilai and Phaedra, and his acceptance of the clanless seducers into the inner councils of our clan, are an unfortunate divergence from Dagon's otherwise prudent policies. It would be better if my lord and his most wayward lieutenants were to take a short vacation while I restore Clan Dagon to its normal stability. Is that clear?
Storm sees problems brewing in Clan Dagon, and he would see his competition expelled, at least for a time, while he sorts everything out. He gives us the mimics of his fellow lieutenants, the neo-mimic of Mehrunes Dagon, and one of the 3 keys needed to open the gate into Dagon's realm. Zivilai Moath and Phaedra Shardai, the 2 lieutenants, carry the other 2 keys. Storm doesn't tell us to banish them to get the keys, but he doesn't say not to either.
Dagon's incantory neonymic is Jekeleho Debe Efehezepe. Zivilai's neonymic, Wegarose Chekolhu. Phaedra's neonymic, Nepekwe Kodo. I will give you a document bearing the appropriate neonymic, the Daedric characters, the transliteration into Tamrilic, and a phonetic transcription to help you pronounce the phrases effectively.
See, the door was supposed to open. Thankfully, jumping in this game is goofy, and collision is more hypothetical than literal. Zivilai Moath, adopted son of Mehrunes Dagon, and leader of Clan Dagon's Frostdaedra, Clanfair, and Morphoid, is considered more slow-witted and brutish than his comrades. But it was he who engineered this entire scheme. He approached Jaeger Tharn with Dagon's desire to assault the Battlespire. We tell him we know his Nimic, and that it was Phaedra Shardai, not Imago Storm, who revealed it to us. Rather than futz around with his overly complicated name, we agree to an oath. In exchange for his gate key and safety from his clan, we will never reveal his neonymic to any other soul. Except himself, of course. I was just expecting the key, so this is a great deal in our favor. Phaedra Shardai, seen here cosplaying as Chucky from Child's Play, demands we swear to her service, and in exchange, she'll give us the key that we seek. But we went through the trouble of getting her Nimic, so I hate myself, the temptation is just too great. I banish you, Phaedra Shardai, Nempekwe Kodo, to the wells of oblivion. I know it's bad form to gloat, but, well, nya. I swear, the dialogue options in Battlespire were the framework for Fallout 4. She turned into a key! It's a shame there's no reaction from her, or even an animation. She just pops out of existence, leaving the key behind. With all 3 keys, we return to the chamber where we met Imago Storm, place all 3 into this, whatever it is, and step onto the platform surrounded by bloody ribs. I told you this level was short. Welcome to the Deadlands. Well, they're not called the Deadlands yet, but it's pretty clear this is what would become the Deadlands in Oblivion. And less than 10 years later, too. Can you believe it? Bethesda used to make games. It's called the Hunting Lodge of Mehrunes Dagon. I don't know why Dagon has the trappings of a hunter in this game. It's not like Hircine didn't exist yet. It's like Bethesda planned on the main antagonist being Hircine, but then realized Hircine wouldn't actually do any of this. Even the Great Hunt in the Chimera of Desolation would not fit his character. It's not a hunt if the prey has no means of escape. Otherwise, it's just animal husbandry. Had the boss Hern not been invulnerable, it would have been more sporting. But he wasn't not invulnerable, so it wasn't sporting. Now, what do we gotta do here, besides collecting sigils of entry? There's a scroll on the ground right where you spawn in, and it basically tells you everything you have to do. It's not even subtle about it. And there's no signature at the end, so who wrote it? It explains that the many wraiths in this realm are mortals who, in life, pledge their souls to Dagon. In exchange, they each received a powerful artifact. The longbow of heaven's hail, the boots of peace, the gauntlets of the poor, the helmet of the light within. Some are in the possession of the wraiths. Others are hidden, secreted away. We don't care about them. Our quarry is a dark seducer by the name of CS, Dagon's personal bodyguard and current paramour. She was gifted the Sword of the Moon Reaver, wider than a mile, a weapon hewn from Dagon's own substance, and the only weapon able to do him harm. We're gonna need it. It's a good thing it's here. Along with the sword, we'll need to gather 3 sigils of entry from 3 of Dagon's lieutenants scattered about the stage. A shocking turn of events. Oh, would you look at that? They came up with the push thing over idea on the previous level and they just couldn't help themselves.
I believe my lord and lover may have underestimated you, mortal. It is not a mistake I will make. But I must admit to a certain tingling of curiosity in anticipation of your actions and your fate. And so I propose the following conditions. Do not offend against me, and I will not offend against you.
I'm not considered this
me
I'm die. That was CS, and this is the broadsword of the Moon Reaver. Excellent. Oh, that was a Daedra count. Shit! It would be interesting to go back to the original Daggerfall. See how that would play. Because I feel like it's tough for me to criticize Battlespire since my only experience with Daggerfall is Unity. So maybe I'm being... What the fuck? How the hell could you beat this game without taking spell absorption? My god. As we explore, we stumble upon a scroll telling someone named Lemekwe to conduct us to Dagon's lodge with utmost hospitality. Lemekwe is CS's neonymic, and it's the name we must speak to this plunger that lowers the bridge leading to a ballista that shoots us across the lava and onto the main island of the stage. Just make the bridge connect to the main island. What's the point of the giant crossbow? What does it add? It's just goofy. Oh, it was probably the hot air balloon guy. Before even entering Dagon's lodge, we're assaulted by a horde of Daedra counts and their machine gun magic. It's such an overwhelming attack that we actually die for the first time. Actually, the real first time was because I drowned while menuing, but that doesn't count. Come on! After that absolute mess of a gauntlet, we reach Dagon's purple balls, give them both a tickle, and step into the great blue portal. We've made it, face to face with the Prince of Destruction himself. Our ticket out of here. Oh, and Josiah's strung up behind him. Excellent. We can both leave.
At last. I trust I find you in good health. I had wondered at your delay.
I am well, Lord Dagon, thank you, though I can't say the same for your retainers who bid me welcome.
Congratulations. Your honor of the Savior's hide protects you from the magical forces that paralyze your friend. You are well prepared, which is exactly according to plan. Some important and valuable artifacts have long eluded my grasp. And now, you thoughtfully bring them to me.
I see you are well informed by your spies, the seducers, which is exactly according to my plan. Certainly now you think you know everything, and become careless, complacent, and overconfident.
Come now. Surely a Daedra prince can fear no harm from a humble creature like yourself.
See? Careless, complacent, and overconfident, as I said. Just suppose that this humble creature knows the secret of your protonymic, as in the sorceress abjuration. I banish you, Mehrunes Dagon, the Keloga, to the wells of oblivion. How do you like them apples?
Well, I must say, I am impressed. Bravo. You are a promising student. However, I am afraid I must inform you that without my neonymic, the protonymic will do you no good.
Oh dear, what a silly ass I am. Surely now you'll blast me to powder because I lack your neonimic. Nuts. But, you know, I'm feeling lucky today. So lucky that I bet I can just guess your neonimic. Let's see. How about Jakeleho Debe Efehezepe? Just a wild guess, but let's give it a whirl. How about I banish you, Mehrunes Dagon, Lekeloga Jakeleho Debe Efehezepe, to the wells of oblivion. This writing sucks.
What? Why, you arrogant little bug. You think you can suck the power from me and cast me into oblivion? Well, it is not so simple as that. So long as my power is anchored to this world, I can resist the outflow of my magicka. If not forever, then certainly long enough to blast you and your incantation into component syllables. And consider, fool, no mortal weapon ever forged has the power to sever my anchor to this realm.
Of course, how could I be so silly to have come all this way without a weapon to sever your ties to this realm? Only a weapon forged from your own substance could ever harm you. But wait, look what I have here. The broadsword of the Moon Reaver, personally forged from your own essence for your bodyguard and paramour, the Dark Seducer, who so lately has fallen in combat. Is it too much to hope that this weapon is the very weapon I need?
1,000 curses! You are right, mortal. I have been a fool. Mistakes have been made. But no more. You will die now, before more mistakes are made.
I can see I've pushed you too far. I just need a few moments of respite from your terrible power. Can no one help me? Will no one protect me for just the few instants necessary to strike the crucial blow? Shucks. If only I knew how to get in touch with my old friend and ally who owes me a favor. JCL Morgan, JCL, by your generous oath I summon you. Come now, this is a really, really, really good time. What? Okay, we need the sword. Oh. Battlespire. What an absolute mess of a game. I respect it for what it was trying to do. I appreciate that it exists. I understand fully why it was a commercial and critical failure. Its only saving grace is that it provides a lot of cool lore for the developers of Tamriel Rebuilt to play with. The game just closes. Wow, that's terrible.